SFBOL here have a Orion AR attack raider versus Romulan KDR game on Vassal. It's a teaching game played against a new player. So here's what the Orion attack raider looks like. He's coming in with a phaser in each wing, 2 photons, and a drone rack. So it's 4 phaser 1s, 4 phaser 3s. The Romulan has 2 S's, 2 F's, or sorry, 2 plasma D's, 4 phaser 3s, 4 phaser 1s. Does not have cloak. The Orion does not have engine doubling. Like I said, teaching game. And 4 phaser 1s, 4 phaser 3s on the Orion. Now I did play this game back once creating a video, but for some reason the audio went wonky. Half the audio is there and half the audio is not, so I'm re-recording it as I'm re-watching it. So I may have had wonderful insights the first time I commented on it, and I may not know what the hell they were this time around. But anyway, let's redo the audio and I'll reattach it to the video and upload it. Okay, so here's the Romulan, the Orion. High support, active fire control, fully paying for his photons. He should be holding them because he's coming weapon status 3, or at least holding one, arming the other. And he's paying for phasers when he doesn't need to. He's actually coming in weapon status 3 and the phasers are charged. He's probably thinking those are the wing phasers and that they need to be charged. No, they're being held. He's underpaying for his shields. It's 1+1 for shields. It's 1 for minimum shields, 2 for full shields. So he's misunderstood that. And he's paying for 1 point of reinforcement. And for some reason he's paying 8.04 into movement. I don't know why he's paying a fraction. 8 points is speed 12, and that's the speed that he's going turn 1. And he throws away 0.96 power at the bottom. I don't know why. But the 0.96 and the 0.04 is the other 1 point that he would have been paying for his activating shields. So he's really throwing away, I think, 6 points of power here in the phasers and in the photons. So newbie mistakes, I guess. Now, coming in weapon status 3, all your phasers are fully armed. And here's the Romulan. 31 power, 4 battery available, life support, fire control, shields, plasma torpedoes being held, plasma Ds being armed, arming them all on turn 1. Don't need to do that. Could have just paid 0.5 per or none, but paid for them all at once. 8 power for speed 12. ECM, ECCM, holding 2 suicides, arming 2 other suicides. There's no cloak on the Romulan here. Phaser capacitor is full with 6 in it. So both ships are speed 12. And we have some basic maneuvering on turn 1. Orion turns down, Romulan gives chase. Orion turns back. Basically it's a slow turn 1. And then on the last impulse we have some plasma launches and some firing. So Romulan launches a plasma S. And fires 3 phaser 1s, does 2 points, and it's reinforced by 1 and 1 battery, so no damage. Okay, so turn 2, allocation. Oh, I'm noticing the 2 paid for phaser capacitor. Just noting that that's wrong. It should be 8 for the capacitor because there's 4 phaser 1s, 2 in the wings for 6, 4 phaser 3s for 2 more. So that's 8 point capacitor and it's full. And this is the rule set that's being used for this game. Okay, so back to energy allocation. Draining 4 battery during energy allocation from the batteries. Putting 0.33 back in. Paying for light support, fire control shields. Paying for plasmas. Increasing speed. Speed is 22. Light support, ECM, ECCM. Arming 2 suicides. Holding 2 suicides. So he's only got 3 battery as he's drained 1. Again, he's paying for phasers he doesn't need to. And he's overpaying for photons again. The only thing I can think of is that he thought he might have been coming at weapon status 0 instead of weapon status 3. But again, he underpays for his activating shields. So that photons, you generally assume 2 points per tube. So he could have assumed that his first photon was completely overloaded and held, and then paying for the second one, which would have worked at roughly about the same amount of power. But anyway. So he's recharging battery. Speed 16 on the Orion, 2 ECM, natural. Romulan speed 22, 2 cutting, and 2 defensive. So the Orion has a shift to 1 against him for direct fire. Okay, Romulan turns off, plasma closes, Orion turns up. Orion turns away. Orion chases. Romulan fires at the plasma. 1 phaser 1. Does 7 damage, so 3 off the warhead. And fires 4 phaser 3s at the plasma. Does 8 off the warhead. Romulan launches. When the Orion turns up. S torpedo, 30 points. And a plasma D. Romulan turns down. Orion is side-slipping towards the Romulan to give chase and turns towards the plasma. Fires a phaser 1 at the plasma S. Does 4 off the warhead. Ends up taking 30 to the shield, drops the shield. Romulan then launches another, the Orion launches a drone. And the Romulan fires 3 phaser 1s at the down number 1 shield. And the Romulan player has placed a counter on the map to track the shields of the Orion. The Orion's using a graphic SSD in a paint program outside of the client. So it ends up doing a drone, bridge, hull, and right warp engine hit on the Orion. And then it's end of turn. So 3 phasers fired from the Romulan, leaving a 1 in the capacitor. Energy allocation, 0.33 in the battery. Pays for life support, active fire control shields, recharges 1 battery, or 1 phaser. Holds plasma, turn 1 arming plasma. Plasma Ds are all armed. Increases speed at speed 27. Holds 2 suicides. Continues to arm 2 other suicides, but underarms it. Simply because he's using that power for speed, but still is basically paying the 1 point for holding. Okay, so in the Orion, has 0.34 in battery. Again, does something odd with his photons, is overpaying a little bit, underpaying for his shields, so he's throwing away 1 point of power between the combined of the 3 lines. That should be a 2 and 2 for holding, and then 2 for shields. This is what the Romulan looks like. We took the general SSD and edited it to be it. So it's only got 2 phaser 1s on the nose. The phaser 2s down back are actually the phaser 3s. And we had to add the 2 phaser 1s that are in the wingtips. So those are over here. So it's an LFL, RR, RFR, LR. Those are phaser 1s. And then there's the phaser 2, the plasma Ds underneath, which are left side and right side. And of course, everything else is just edited down to be what it's supposed to be. Okay, so first impulse, the Romulan fires 1 phaser 1, range 915, the one he did not fire last impulse. And for a moment there, I misread that as 3 phaser 1s because there was a typo of 3 phaser 1s. So we're just quickly checking that to make sure that it is able to be fired. And it is indeed 1 phaser that can fire and 1 phaser that is firing. So that 3 phaser 1s again is a typo. It's 1 phaser 1. End up doing an auxiliary control. Romulan rolled a lot of 12s and 2s when doing damage. So the Orion is speed 19, there's speed 20 drone on the board. Romulan launches a Plasma D, 2 of them, one at the Romulan ship, Orion ship, and one at the Orion drone. With Plasma Ds, you can only launch one of the 2 of them at a size class 3 ship or above, or size class 4 ship and above per turn. But with the Plasma Ds in defensive mode, you can launch the entire rack at plasmas, one impulse after the other. So your rack has got 4, so you can empty the entire rack of 4 different drones in one turn if you need to. Orion turns up. Plasma hits the drone, annihilates it. Plasma hits the Romulan. I keep calling the Orion Romulan. Plasma hits the Orion. Romulan turns, launches that plasma that he wanted to launch earlier but was unable to because it was out of arc. And this is the tracker that the Romulan player added in to track the shields of the Orion. So down number 1, damage number 3. 2 ECM, no cutting. Orion turns up. And here the Orion player is using the menus to turn his ship. So he's going right click, movement, turn left or turn right. That's why he's rotating around in circles like he is. Romulan turns up. Plasma closes. For a moment there, the Romulan thought he had already turned and then realized he hadn't. Plasma hits Romulan. I didn't notice it at the time, but apparently, no, he took it on the proper shield. 22 points to the number 2 shield, lowers it to 8. For a moment there, I thought he took it on the number 3, but it wasn't. It was on the 2. And here the Romulan is not paying attention, doesn't realize he's getting close to the edge of the map. Again, energy allocation. This is what his photon turn should have been looking like all along. 2 and 2. But anyway, again, still underpaying for the shields. Should be a 2 on the activate shield line. He's increasing speed. Phasers used, 1. Phaser capacitor now 0. 0.33 in the battery. Putting 4 into reserve warp. Let's protect fire control shields. Paying for plasma. Turn 1 arming on one plasma. Turn 2 arming on another. Decrease in speed. Speed 17. And holding 4 suicides and resumes putting power into the suicides to bring them up to full suicide level. Romulan clues in that he's getting close to the edge of the board. Realizes that they hadn't designated as a floating map for the battle, so turns in towards the Orion. The Orion would have closed on the Romulan by 5 by the end of the turn anyway, so no point in delaying the closure. Orion turns in, faces a down shield towards the Romulan. Weapon launching happening. Plasma launches. Plasma D. And a fast-loaded F in an S tube. That's 30 points of plasma that's real. And Romulan is firing a phaser 1 through a down shield. And Orion is returning fire with 2 overloaded photons. Three damage to the Orion. Drone, phaser, and Oxcon, or phaser impulse Oxcon. 2 photons hit, drop the shield for 32. 2 internals, 6 and 12, so Hull and Oxcon. Orion side slips to try and bring an up shield to bear. Romulan goes forward to put an up shield to bear. Plasmas go forward on their first impulse of movement. Romulan side slips to keep close to Orion. Orion side slips away. Tries to get away from plasmas. Turns. Plasmas hit. Hitting the number 5 shield. 28 on a 24, so it's 4 internals. Hull right warp, bridge and aux, which ends up being a sensor and a scanner hit because he's at a bridge and aux. And the phaser 1 fires through the shield that is now down from the plasma. At this point, the Orion might actually be uncontrolled because he may not have any control spaces. But he might have an aux or something like that. Hull and a photon hit. Orion turns. Orion turns again. Orion's coming back towards the Romulan. Okay, shuttle bay operations. Romulan launches a shuttle. Orion retaliates with a shuttle launch of his own. Romulan messes up, means to launch it in direction D, but launches it in direction B. Last impulse, Romulan side slips, and Orion turns. The Orion here could have side slipped and put his number 6 shield towards the Romulan, but he turned for some reason, put his number just down number 1 towards the Romulan. My guess it was to bring a phaser 1 to bear on the right hand side, but I don't know why he did that. And that's where the Romulan messed up on his launch of his suicide. And the suicide goes forward because it's the first launch movement. Or since movement, first movement since launch. And it's got to be forward. And we go into launch allocation. So we are at range 0 with the Romulan number 1 facing the Orion number 1 facing the Romulan. Romulan's number 4 facing the Orion. Orion charges phasers. 1 photon is destroyed. Arms another photon. Completely forgets to pay for activating shields for some reason. Only puts 2 in the movement. And puts 8 in the tractor. Starts arming a suicide and puts 1 in the ECM. So the suicide was a wasted point of power, so let's just assume he put that back on the activate shield line. So really he only had 7 in tractor. Okay, so 2 points was used in energy allocation for a fast load, 2 points went into the phaser capacitor. On this turn, no battery. 4 in the phaser, 4 in the battery. Let's put active fire control shields. Second turn of arming on a torpedo. First turn of arming on a torpedo. Plasma Ds, of course, are still fully paid for. Putting 3 power into attacks, which is 2 for warp tack, 1 for an impulse tack. 3 in the tractor beam. 0.6 in the transporters for paying for 3 transporters. 3.4 in ECM, 2 points in the ECCM, and paying for 3 suicide shuttles being held. And both ships tractor each other. Romulan doesn't bother trying to fight the Orion tractor. The Orion tries to fight the Romulan tractor and breaks it with 8 points of power. But actually, he only had 7, so he really didn't break it. But anyway, it doesn't make a difference. The tractors here were kind of not really needed for either of them. Romulan launches a Plasma D and launches a Suicide Shuttle, because he launched on the 31st and is launching again on the 1st. Now we're placing them here at range 1. They're actually range 0, but we're being placed at range 1 for reference for where it's going to hit on the shields. 4 phaser 1s from the Orion on the Romulan. It's hitting up shield of 26. 2 phaser 1s from the Romulan at the Orion through a down shield. And the damage from the Orion is 25 after shifting from the electronics, which leaves 1 point on the shield. And of course here again the Romulan could have side-slipped and had a 30-point shield facing, but didn't. Or the Orion had a 30-point shield he could have had facing. I keep calling the Orion Romulan. Okay, so 25 to a 26 shield and 12 internals on the Orion. Okay, after the damage, the Romulan tacks to bring it up shield, or a stronger shield. And the suicide and the plasma hits the Orion, and the Orion concedes. And there would have been feedback coming to the Romulan from from the plasma torpedo. 25% of 10, 2 points. But here's where the Orion concedes. Again, it was a learning game, a new player. So that's the end of the game, and actually I think we pop in here to show what the ships look like at the end. So there's what the Orion looked like, and the Romulan basically had 2 shields down and like 2 internals, and so that's the end of the game. Hope you enjoyed it.